doors, or even behind iron walls, to feel the need to be set free. You want to liberate your mind, controlling secrets, yet you will find the need to be set free. And the Lord says, captives be free, just come to me. I'll break those chains that hold you down.
Hi, everybody. We're here again with the special Heroes of Hope show that we're about to have, and I'm so excited about it because we're not only bringing in a couple of different episodes, but we're bringing in a couple of different generations of testimonies. I'm real excited about that. Today we have a very special guest by the name of Mike Carraba, and he's from Gateway Church. And we're real excited to have him, a powerful testimony. And so as we get ready to continue, I just want to inform you to get a pen and a piece of paper, because at the end of the show, you'll be able to get a lot of information in reference to all the different groups that are running right now, the 12-step groups to celebrate recovery, celebrate renewal and recovery groups that are happening throughout Staten Island. It's so important that you get ready to take down that information, okay? So you do that. But right now, what we want to ask you is, Mike, we want to greet you.
Well, thank you.
We want to greet you, and we're so. Give me a handshake, my brother.
Praise
Come
you,
on
Lord.
now.
Thank you,
and we
thank
want to
you.
thank you for coming and being a part of the show. And I'm sure the viewers are probably wondering more about who are you at first. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Instead of the testimony, but a little bit about yourself.
Okay. All right. Well, first I want to just say I'm 67 years old, and to be a guy at my age and being in a past lifestyle, which was drugs and hard drugs, that is, it takes a toll on a person, because it doesn't just start with drugs. It's a continuum that brings you to your death or it brings you to life. So just a little bit about that. But the reality was I was born and raised in Staten Island. My whole lifestyle was centered around family, eating good food, and enjoying that type of life. But what happened along the way, back in 1967, 66, it was all about music. And when you got into music, you got into things like the hippie generation and the Beatles and the hard drugs, the hard rock, Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, and all this music was just so electrifying. It brings me to a place of saying, wow, this is really a lot of fun. And that type of fun is always centered around people that are doing the fun stuff, which starts out as fun, but then it becomes a job. Then it becomes a work. And I love Staten Island, born and raised here, like I said, and I'm happy to be here.
That's awesome. It's awesome. So you're a Staten Island native.
Yeah, I'm a native.
That definitely leads me to my next question then, because this show is specifically designed to be able to address a lot of the drug epidemic that's happening here in Staten Island, and we bring on testimonies and organizations, and the reality is you being a native Staten Islander, what's your opinion or your thoughts concerning what you've been viewing, what you've been witnessing, maybe
Right.
a lot of people that what this epidemic has been doing here in Staten Island. How do you feel about it?
Okay. Everything that I see going on in this neighborhood, in Staten Island, and in the rest of the world, in the rest of the United States even, is appalling to me. But when it comes down to Staten Island, it's very personal. Understanding that the people that are addicted to drugs has become such an epidemic that people just don't know what to do. There's no hope left. So when we get people like Pastor Joe with Heroes of Hope, we're talking about people that are offering them a way out of their hell. the way out of their problems, that they could at least get something back in their brain that's going to give them hope, which is missing in this world. It's missing in politics, it's missing in everything. But when it's in you personally, that reality starts to grow, and you become a little bit more of a purveyor, you might say, to help others that are in trouble. So my heartfelt feeling about Staten Island is I wish for the best. I personally would say that if they could put me in every one of the funeral parlors that I've been in for people that OD'd and are gone now, the parents had to understand that their children were on a bad road going that way. But most importantly is at that funeral parlor, they can't bring them back. And here I am going in to visit somebody, and I want to stand up in front of everybody there and know that when I look into your son or your daughter's eyes, I'm looking into somebody who was my eyes at one point. We were there. We understand. We're on a slippery slope there, and you just can't fall unless somebody allows you to fall. And we personally don't have our own life anymore until we find something better to help us. And that's what Heroes of Hope is all about, pointing us in the right direction.
Yeah. I appreciate you mentioning that. When you talk about people that have overdosed, some are younger, statistics are staggering when it comes to Staten Island. and that's overwhelming within itself. But what brings the church to a place, or people like you and me to a place of wanting to embrace hurting people, is not just the people that are on drugs, but also that families that have been devastated because of the drugs. And I'm sure that you've encountered that, in people maybe your own age that have lost grandkids or family members and stuff. So how does that make you, feel in reference to broken families and maybe even marriages that have been through living hell because of it?
Yeah, I want to say that back in the day, it had to be in 1971. I was an ex-hippie coming out of that lifestyle. And when I came to know that I was in trouble, I had friends that OD'd, girls too, that we brought back up. Some we had to let go, right? I mean, they're gone. But who OD'd in Rikers Island? Because of the scenario they were put in, they hung themselves. People on trains jumping in front. I mean, this is things that people don't normally do. But when it came to me and I saw myself in that same scenario where I knew that people were dying and I could have been one, when somebody came to me, actually, I'll tell you, it was my cousin Vinny. Vinny, it may sound strange to you, but Vinny was the guy who came to me, who grew up right around this neighborhood on Staten Island, and he was just doing speed. He was a speed freak, and yet he came to me after I was in the hospital with hepatitis. I just got drafted into the Army. They threw me out because I had hep C. They saw track marks and everything. But you know what? I came out of that. I'm in the hospital, and here he is telling me about the Lord. But when he told me about the Lord, I recognized the fact that I didn't want to know about the Lord or about Jesus Christ. I didn't want to know about that stuff. That stuff is something that, are you kidding me? I got to go to this? I'm already doing drugs. Why would I want to go even lower to find something to help me? I felt that going into finding the Lord was even a bad move. But what I realized after a while was I had nowhere else to go. I was in trouble. I was doing dope. I was shooting this stuff. Now, am I proud of that? No. But I will tell you that I had the courage and the guts to do it when I did it, because I was the kind of guy that didn't care. When I first got high on dope, I mainlined it the first time. People normally sniff it. I didn't care. And I became a kid that didn't care. And I realized that for my life, what I was, like your daughter and your son is we're all pleasure seekers. We're looking for fun. We want to have, it's a kind of feeling of having fun to enjoy ourselves. But meanwhile, we're setting up ourselves to become slaves to our addiction. And though when you ask me about Staten Island, your people, these kids are slaves to their addiction. So my heart is reaching out to you from a standpoint of, guess what? 45 years ago, the Lord saved me, and I didn't want to be saved. I was thinking that the Lord was not a great thing. So I may be excited about this, but guess what? Whatever happened 45 years ago, if not longer, is still helping me today. And I still stand in front of this mic and tell people that need help. There's a place to go that's going to lift you out of your hellhole and put your feet on a rock. And one of the things is, maybe I may sound a little preachy, but I want you to know that when we come to know who the Lord is, what he does is, number one, he forgives us of our weights that we've been through, but he also gives us peace. And that's something that happened to me. And he set my feet upon a rock. He established my goings. And that's what the Lord does. He gives us a song. Now, remember, I didn't want to know the Lord. But now, all these years later, I'm still walking in faith and in peace and in knowledge. So I want your children to know that. I want people to know that. Because if I don't tell them, I know Pastor Joe, you'll tell them. But the thing is, we don't get a chance to stand in front of everybody until we get a program like this.
I think that's why, exactly. I think that's why it's so important to have this show and have these episodes so that there could be a lot of people to be able to testify and share their heart. Did you come from your family? Did you come from a Catholic background?
No, I did not. No, I didn't.
The reason why I was asking you that is because I know that there's so many people in Staten Island that come from a Catholic
Yes.
faith background, and then you have evangelical faith and stuff like that. And I just wanted to ask you your thoughts. When you think about people of different understandings or different
Right.
faiths, and
Right.
different ways of expressing their faith,
Correct.
does that really matter if you're Catholic or if you're born again or if you're evangelical when you realize that your pain is greater than your fear,
Right.
and it comes to a place where you just know you need God to intervene?
Right.
Sometimes people do like what you said. They don't want God, and they get to that place in their life where it's just a desperate need, and they need a miracle. They need
Yes.
transformation.
Right.
They need an intervention to take place. And it sounds like you were there.
Yes,
And
definitely.
that's why I'm asking.
So, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I was brought up a wannabe Catholic, and reality means that all my friends, I'm Italian, and how are you not Catholic? Well, the thing is that in my life, my grandfather had a baby with his wife, and when the baby died before it was baptized, the priest told my grandfather that the baby was going to hell. So after my grandfather slapped this guy around a little bit, he realized I want nothing to do with that church. But bottom line is they end up going to this church where it was a Protestant church. But this is the thing, is that anybody that's Catholic, Protestant, or whatever, unless they have an intimate relationship with the Lord, that's always going to be a mental one. So if you go to a priest, for instance, and you say, Father, my son, my daughter, they're addicted. What do? They'll say, send them to AA. And AA is a mental understanding of how to get help. But without the Lord in that equation, you're never going to get the joy of the Lord to bring you into this 12 step and bring you past it into a relationship with the Lord.
When in reality, the AA and 12 step and the NA was all created, the 12 steps themselves, with God as the center.
100%.
And so when you pull away from, when you make the faith component or the God component of it secondary, you're pulling out the biggest ingredient that brings transformation in a person's life.
Right.
And so that is so important.
Okay.
What you're saying.
Yeah, so I want to just add to that if a person is married, they want to have an intimate relationship with their wife. That's just part of our understanding, because we want to be able to procreate. You agree?
Yes.
Yeah, but what happens when we have a God that we hold a stop sign to his face and say, don't get too close? And in many times, the religion that we're talking about could be any Catholic, Protestant, I don't care, even Jews. The reality is that they're holding a stop sign in front of God. I don't want him too close. Why? Because he may get too close to my pet sin. Thank you very much. My pet internal sin. We've got to come clean with God for the one reason that
we're powerless.
We're powerless. We need his help. But we need his help not only for that, but our life is at stake. And if we don't find that Lord, we don't find that religion or spirituality, we're never going to have enough power to get us through to recovery.
That leads me to this then. your spirituality, your power, your religion, is it found in Jesus Christ?
Ah, there we go. So now he uncovers the most important.
Well,
the-
what is it that happened to you?
Okay,
You know what I mean? How did you change? Was it Christ
okay.
that came into your life?
All right. So cousin Vinny walks into the hospital.
I think most Italian families have a cousin Vinny.
Right. So cousin Vinny walks into my the hospital bed. I was right next door here, Doctor's Hospital, and this is 1970, like that. And Vinny walks in, and he's no longer using speed anymore, and he comes in and tells me that he found the Lord. And I said, "You found the Lord? Lord who?"
As if he was lost.
Leah, like you, I said, where was this guy? Where was he? Down the ferry terminal? That's what I said to him. He said, "No, Mike, I found him in my heart." I said, "You what?" I said, "Vinny, I love you, brother. You're my cousin, but you flipped out. Your mind is shot, man." And he said to me something very startling. He said, "Mike, what do you got to lose by trying?" Danny, Pat, Jane, these other people, they're gone. They're dead, Mark. These name more. They're dead. What do you think, you're on the same road or not? And he said, "What do you got to lose by trying?" So at that point, I said, okay. And that night, while I was in my quarantine room with the Hep C, sure enough, this guy, the Lord spoke to my heart. God spoke to me and said, "Follow me and you'll be all right." So I said, okay. I went to bed, and about couple of months later, whatever it was, I ended up going to this church. But it wasn't a Catholic church. It was a Spirit-filled church. I call it a seatbelt church. You know, where these people are, they're praising the Lord and saying, "Thank you, God." For what reason, I don't know, until I went to this church. And when I went there, a pastor said to me at the church in front of everybody, he said, "Does anybody want to be relieved of their burden and the weight that's on their back?" And I immediately raised my hand. He wasn't asking anybody to raise his hand, but I wanted to be relieved. So sure enough, after the service, I go up to the front and I say, "God," and this to answer the question. I said, "Jesus Christ," this is what I said. If you're there, if you're real, you got to be real to me as this. Be real to me as shooting dope, getting high, because that's what I was doing. And I did it because I wanted to do it, but I needed something better to help me. And when the Lord came into my life, I said, "Jesus, if you're there, if you're real, be real to me. Come into my heart." And when I asked that to happen, all of a sudden, I felt his peace come into my life. And when I felt his peace come in, the guilt of all the crap that I did went out the back door. And when I went out the back door, all of a sudden I was flooded with peace, and I found something I never thought was going to happen, and I started crying. I started crying because I never knew that this could possibly take place in a person's life. It may not happen that way for you, but I will tell you this, that when the Lord puts his hand out and asks you to follow me, and you do that, and you ask the Lord into your heart, because I know there's many people listening to these people on TV saying, "Just ask the Lord into your heart." You may be Catholic, Protestant, Jew, Gentile, I don't care what you are, but if you ask the Lord in your heart, you're on the road. And by reading the Word of God, it's going to strengthen you and make you way stronger than just a religion that you think is important. It's going to be the Lord in your personal life.
Let me ask you this: the tears that came down your face that day, did it feel the same way for you as it felt for me? That it was like a relief. It was like sincerity.
Forget it.
It was like gratefulness.
Perfect.
It was literally a cleansing.
Amen.
I felt like hostility, frustration. All the negatives were coming
Hallelujah.
through my eyes. They were in my tears.
Amen.
I was like losing weight because I was being cleaned. Is that how
Exactly.
you felt too?
Exactly.
We might have different stories.
No, but
there's
that's
certain
it.
things to
That's what happened.
conversion and breakthroughs
So
I hear that are very similar with guys like you and me that come from a drug background.
So now this is what happened. Now a woman came over to me, and she said, and while I was there doing this crying thing, and I was calling Jesus, you know, and she said to me, this woman, she tapped me on the back, and she said, "Michael," she said, "I'm Maxine." She said, "I'm cousin Vinny's mentor, friend." She said, "But I want to tell you something. You keep calling out in the church." She said, "You keep calling out Jesus, Jesus, but he's not in the building." I said, "He's not in the building? Where is he?" She said, you invited him into your heart. You asked the Lord to come into your heart and become your personal Savior. What that did for me was that broadened my horizon to understand that God isn't in no gorgeous church or no street corner church. He's in your heart first. And once that establishes itself, now you got to remember, I was shooting dope every day. So now the next day I wake up and, all right, miracles happen, but I didn't know if they could still. I never got high again. I never had a withdrawal. I never had that. This is something.
You got delivered.
I got delivered. Now, I can't
No
say.
withdrawals.
No, nothing. Nothing. I mean that. I mean that sincerely. I will tell you that once that was gone, I was able to stand. I was able to walk in a new life. I mean, every once in a while I would smoke reefer, smoke a joint, or if I met somebody I wanted to, shack down with some chick, that might have happened. You know what I mean? Especially, understanding that I wasn't really. I might have been delivered.
You were in that baby stage,
Yeah.
and you were growing,
Right.
And then God starts dealing with us in that way at the beginning,
Right.
to help us understand that once I was a child, I spoke as a child, I
Amen.
acted like a child,
Right.
But when I became a man, I put away childish things.
That's right.
And he's
That's right.
talking. It's more of a metaphor of spirituality too,
Definitely.
in the sense that you had this experience,
Yep.
but there were certain things you needed to let go of.
Oh, yeah.
And so after all these years now, you're not the man you used to be.
No.
Are you content with who you are now, or do you still want more?
I'm content with who I am now, but I want more of what I know about spirituality. I want more of what I know about God. But I'm not a street corner guy. I'm not a fool for Christ. I'm a believer who knows that my love for the Lord is way more than what my foolishness would be, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because I'm sold out. I know what the Lord has done for me. But more importantly, all these years that's gone by, I have no problem telling anyone, anywhere, anytime. I don't care who they are. And I've been around some people that I told them about the Lord and let them know that that's my peace. That's my most important part of my life.
That's pretty awesome, man. I tell you, there's a lot of stuff that's going on here in Staten Island, and there's many people that are out there in your generation.
Right.
And
Right.
like I said at the beginning of the show, I want to do testimonies. I want to have testimonies that are generational focused. And the reason why is because there's people your age right now that are out there that either
Yes.
have been delivered, have been through some heavy stuff in life that need to share their testimony, or they're going through some stuff right now in their lives.
Yeah, they
and
are.
they need to hear
Yeah.
that God still changes and touches people's lives today.
Amen.
And it's so important.
Yes.
Because sometimes people can feel like, well, where's God?
Yep.
And he's in the midst of this epidemic.
He is.
So what
He
I
is.
want to
He's
ask
here.
you to do, I want to ask you, Mike, who would you want to address if right now you have time? I want you to
Right.
look into the camera and talk to the viewers that are out there that you feel that you need to address right now in reference to inspiring them,
All right.
encouraging
Okay.
them, because they're watching the show and they're
Yeah.
hearing you, and they relate to you. They relate to you. They relate to
Yeah.
being Italian. They relate to what you're sharing about faith. They relate to you about maybe even testimony and different aspects of what you've shared. But they'll tune out later and go right back to the routine.
Right.
And so I want to encourage you
Right.
to give them a few minutes of your time and share something inspiring with
All
them.
right. I recently, a good friend who was in jail for a long time. He was a wise guy, Staten Island, well-known man, gone. He came out of jail and he said to me, he called me. He said, Mike, I want to talk to you. And he said to me that anybody that doesn't have God in their life, they're just a shell of a man. They're empty. Until they get the Lord in their life and the Spirit, they're nothing. So what I want to tell somebody out there is that the personal feelings we have are all centered around pleasure. And if pleasure is the only thing that is going to bring us somewhere, then eventually we're going to run out of pleasure. And we're going to find ourselves in destitute and in desperation. So what happens is that when you dare to call upon the Lord, like I did and really didn't want it, but called on the Lord, and he pulled me out of that horrible pit. And he set my feet upon a rock. He established my goings. And that's the one that I want to tell you is the Lord of peace can come into your life. And if you choose to ask for that, then you're going to be opened up to the power of God and the fellowship of what we share, which is deeper than anything could ever bring us. So thank you. Thank you all for just listening to the fact that I'm a living testimony that is bringing to you the realities of what took place in my life. I was scared to do this thing. And now when I look at you guys out there now, I'm scared for you. I'm just so sorry that there's nobody or not enough people to tell you. And guess what? Your mothers and fathers don't have the answers. Because if you go to a priest, he's going to say, go to an AA meeting. But if you come to a person of faith, they're going to say, go right to the man of faith.
Yeah, absolutely true. You know, you go to these different aspects in life and you research what you need to research. You know, there's a lot of different priests that we've worked with on this island in reference to this drug epidemic. And there's also a lot of pastors that we've worked with on this island. And I can be honest with you that even though that there's groups, AA, NA, Celebrate Recoveries, Celebrate Renewal and Recoveries, and all these different groups that we've established throughout Staten Island, that is a tremendous opportunity to be able to get plugged in somewhere. But we are in agreement on this show that there is a God and the Lord loves each and every one of us, even in the midst of our chaos.
Wow.
So
Beautiful.
if we're waiting
Beautiful.
to become perfect before we run to him, that is not the solution. The solution is in the midst of everything that we've been through, in the midst of our pain, in the midst of our denial, in the midst of our powerlessness, in the midst of it all, he calls out to us
and we
to
surrender.
run to him.
Right.
You know, and
Yep.
so I thank God that there's so many people that do understand that faith is a major component in every area, and I'm grateful. I'm very, very grateful, Mike, that you
Yeah.
came on the show today, and that you're a part of it. And everything
Thank
that
you.
we're doing,
Thank you,
all
Pastor
right?
Joe.
Heroes
Thank
of
you.
Hope is dedicated 100%
Yeah.
to tackling substance abuse together. So get your pen, write down all these information that we have for you for all the different things that are there. And if you want to get in touch with Mike, the information will be there also. God bless you.
Definitely.
Bye-bye.